I've always believed that most discoveries in marriage don't arrive as thunder. They come quietly. A misplaced item, a strange tone, a moment that doesn't fully add up, but not enough to confront, not enough to accuse, just enough to sit in the back of your mind, waiting. For me, everything began with a photo, a single, unremarkable-looking image that appeared where it shouldn't have been. It didn't arrive with a warning, and my wife didn't send it or mention it. It simply surfaced in our shared cloud album one evening while I was sorting pictures from a work trip. I remember the moment exactly. I was sitting at my desk, sipping cold coffee, dragging images from my phone into a travel folder. The shared album refreshed, and suddenly there it was. A picture I had never taken, never seen, never expected. At first glance, it seemed almost meaningless. It showed our living room, the lighting a little dim, the curtains partially drawn, the sofa in the center. And sitting on that sofa was my wife, her back to the camera. Her hair slightly messy, like she had just pulled it up and let it down again. She was wearing a beige tank top she usually wore on weekends. But my eyes didn't stop on her. They stopped on the hand. A man's hand resting on her shoulder, just barely within the frame, a thumb touching the fabric of her shirt. A gesture that wasn't casual, a gesture you couldn't mistake for anything else. I stared at the image for a long moment, my brain scrambling to fill the gap between what I knew and what I was seeing. There was an instinctive urge to explain it away. Maybe it was old. Maybe she took it with me and forgot. Maybe it synced from some backup. But something was off, so I tapped on the info button, and that's when the air left my lungs. XIF data, location, our apartment. Timestamp, 2 days ago. Device, an unfamiliar phone model, newer than either of ours. I sat back in my chair, suddenly aware of how loud the refrigerator sounded in the kitchen. The house was quiet otherwise. Too quiet. I couldn't move for a moment. I couldn't even swallow. 2 days ago, I had been at work. She had told me she spent the afternoon doing laundry and preparing a presentation for a client. I had no reason to doubt her. I still didn't want to doubt her. I closed the photo and opened it again, as if it would change. It didn't. The hand was still there. To understand why I didn't immediately confront her, you'd need to understand our marriage. We had been together for over 10 years. We were the stable couple in our friend group. We argued rarely, laughed often, and lived comfortably together in routines we both liked. We shared a cloud album for convenience. Groceries, notes for home repairs, photos of our dog. Nothing secretive, nothing dramatic. It wasn't a surveillance tool, it was just useful. A few weeks earlier, she upgraded her phone because her old one was lagging. I remembered helping her transfer everything. She was unusually protective of her device during the process, but I chalked it up to normal privacy. After that, she took more photos than usual. Random things. Her plants, the dog sleeping on the balcony, a sunset from the window. Or at least that's what I assumed. I didn't check her private albums. I never cared to. But now I wondered. When she came home that evening, I didn't say anything about the picture. I wanted to understand first. I wanted to see if there was an explanation, even an unlikely one. She cooked dinner like always, humming a song she probably heard at work, dropped a kiss on my cheek, talked about an annoying email thread with her manager. Everything was normal, perfectly so, which made the photo feel even more surreal. I noticed the first small thing that didn't add up when I cleared the table. There was a faint hint of cologne in the air. Not mine, not hers, something sharper. Something I had smelled before in the past weeks but ignored, thinking maybe it came from outside or from the last time guests were over. This time I recognized it immediately. It was on the man's sleeve in the photo, not visible, but somehow familiar. I didn't sleep much that night. Over the next few days, I paid attention in ways I hadn't before. The living room cushions were sometimes arranged differently. A mug I rarely used appeared rinsed in the sink. The blanket on the sofa looked folded with her style, which meant someone else had sat there and she had tried to tidy quickly. She locked her phone faster when I walked into the room. But still, nothing was definitive. Until the second photo appeared. This one surfaced in the shared cloud album for less than a minute. By the time I tapped it, it was gone. She must have deleted it instantly. But I saw enough. It was taken from a lower angle, maybe accidentally while someone put their phone down. It showed her legs and part of another person sitting close beside her, not touching, just close enough that you wouldn't sit like that with a friend. I didn't mention it. I didn't ask her anything. Instead, I returned to the first photo and stared at it again, letting the reality sink in slowly. I hadn't wanted proof, but I was getting it anyway. The turning point came one evening while she was showering. Her phone was charging on the console table. I wasn't trying to snoop. I wasn't touching the device. But when the screen lit up, I noticed a notification appear. Upload complete. One new item added to shared album. My blood ran cold. I opened the cloud album on my laptop. A new image was there. Fresh. Time-stamped 3 minutes ago. And this time, the truth was impossible to soften. The photo was taken in our hallway mirror. She was standing with her back toward the camera, adjusting her hair. And behind her, reflected in the mirror, was a man, his arm around her waist, his face turned away, but his presence unmistakable. There was no ambiguity, no room for misinterpretation, no shadows or tricks of light. I zoomed in until the pixels blurred. The arm, the posture, the distance between them, all of it told the same story. Not an accident, not an old picture, not a misunderstanding. I sat on the couch and waited. She came out of the bathroom wrapped in a towel, drying her hair, humming lightly. The same little melodic habit that always made me smile before, but now it sounded far away. She entered the living room, and I slowly turned the laptop toward her. She froze mid-step, didn't blink, didn't breathe. Her face drained of its usual warmth. I didn't ask anything. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even feel anger, at least not right then. Just a strange, calm clarity, like walking into a room you've been inside before in a dream. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. There was no stumbling explanation, no defensive tone, no fib out of panic, just silence. A silence so deep it felt like the house itself was holding its breath. I closed the laptop gently, not slamming it, not dramatizing it, just closing the last piece of evidence I needed. I stood up. She flinched slightly as if expecting something loud, something explosive. But the truth didn't make me explosive. It made me detached. I told her we would talk tomorrow, that I needed air, that I needed space, that I needed to understand what this meant for me, not for us. She whispered my name once, as if that was enough to rewind time. It wasn't. I walked out of the apartment, down the hallway, down the stairs, out into the evening air that suddenly felt too cold for spring. I walked without destination, just moving, letting my mind catch up with everything it had ignored, dismissed, rationalized. The images from the cloud replayed themselves on a loop. Her back, the hand, the reflection, the arm around her waist. I realized that betrayal doesn't have a voice. It doesn't knock loudly on the door. It uploads itself quietly when you least expect it. When I returned hours later, she was sitting at the kitchen table, her eyes red, still unable to speak. There was nothing to say. I had all the answers I needed, and they came from the place I trusted most, our shared cloud. Dear subscribers, if you have a story you believe is worth sharing, feel free to send it to us by email, storytimelounge320@gmail.com. We'll be happy to take a look, and it just might become the story featured in our next video.